thank you, Shepard, very much. I am Neil Cavuto, and you didn't hear it from me, everybody, but there's a debate on Thursday. Going to be a big one. All right, just keep it amongst yourselves. But Fox is on it. In fact, we got two big debates that same day, and the battle right now is for that 10th position and who will be the top 10 candidates to be in there. And is there a fear that if you're not in the top 10, you're somehow at a disadvantage? There's a growing debate here. That might not be the case. But this is an audition not only for the American voter, but maybe for the guys who pay the candidates, the donors who might see this sort of as a beauty contest moment and take their chances on, well, the candidate that looks appealing to them or could stand the test of a further race here. To former Democratic pollster Pat Caddell and how it is shaping up. And Patrick, sometime later on, later tonight, maybe a few hours from now, we will know who that 10th person is. But how important is it to be in that top 10? Is it overstated, or are we missing something here?
Well, it's obviously important for people to be there. They're not going to have, remember, there are 10 candidates, and they're not going to have a lot of time in the, during that debate for time. And they're also standing together and debating each other. But you know what? We're really early in the process. I happen to think that the 5 o'clock point, when we have the forum at 5 o'clock to the earlier debate, may actually be important, particularly if something significant is said. But look, it's a chance. Most of the time, debates hurt if you do something to hurt yourself. Occasionally there are great moments when someone says something that helps them, like Lloyd Benson did when he was with Dan Quill, John Kennedy.
Right.
Rick Perry was obviously hurt. He went in the front runner last year and 4 years ago and had a problem. But you know what? Most of it will be forgotten. And we were going on, remember, we're more than 7 months from Iowa. We are going to have, what I like to say, several more turns of the screw here before election cycles, before we ever get to people making a decision. It is still way early.
All right, having said all of that, I always think of these people who fear one debate versus the other. Rick Perry was tackling me earlier. We're going to be running that very, very soon. This notion that are you at a disadvantage in that earlier debate? You could argue without Donald Trump being in that debate, you have more time to get your views across and score some points.
I was thinking that very thought, my friend. I think that I think all the, in that first debate, Donald Trump, who has now swept all the polls and is seeming stronger, not weaker, is going to be the focal point. And whether there's battle or not, he's going to take up a lot of oxygen and space. And so, that's one of the benefits of not, and particularly if it ends up being a war. If they end up yelling and screaming at each other or whatever, instead of being just nice and happy, one might be glad not to be part of that.
Yeah, that could be like my family reunion. We don't want that.
Exactly.
We don't want that. Enter into this little party here, Chris Steirolt of all things politics. This guy's a walking encyclopedia. He is in Cleveland, Ohio, where all of this will be going down. Chris, so much expectation as to who get that 10th spot, and that once you're in there, I think it was Chris Christie who said, if I'm in, there's no distinguishing between whether you're first or 10th. You're in. Is that the case?
Well, yes, but the distinguishment is this creates the whole new chapter of the 2016 cycle. Everything prior to this has been vamping. Everything else has been, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. Yeah. Now it's what can you do? And we're moving from the theoretical to the practical. So voters are smart. I think campaigns, I think a lot of talking heads underappreciate how savvy voters are. They know if somebody can't get there. They know if they don't have the resources. They know if they're underfunded. They may like them, but people are still making electability choices. So I think Governor Christie makes a good point that all he needs is a berth on that stage, and he can do some damage. He can make some inroads. But voters know where he stands in the polls.
I just wonder, Chris, so whether you're at a disadvantage when so many are up there with you. Maybe you can come up with some pre-rehearsed zingers and have them ready, but 9 other guys are going to be doing the same thing, right?
I've seen you do this, Mr. Cavuto. It's a goat roping, and you know it. It's tough. How do you do it? And for the moderators, for Brett, for Megan, for Chris, this is hard because fairness and getting to issues and getting to substance and not gotcha, and as you say, not just giving them an opportunity to throw out canned ham, that's what counts. And so I will say this. I have a lot of confidence in these questions. I have even more confidence in these anchors that they'll get to the meat of the matter and do it in a fair way.
Yeah. Pat Caddell, I'm thinking of your old boss, Jimmy Carter. And I think if we had a structure like this back in 1976, he wouldn't have been in anyone's top tier.
No, and that's the point I wanted to make to Chris. And my good friend Chris, and he's right about
Be
this.
careful,
but
Chris, when he starts with the good friend.
Less about it's you and Cavuto, you guys.
Yeah, right.
You do it. Jimmy Carter wouldn't have been there in '76. He was left off the Gallup poll in December of 1975. They forgot him. This is when I don't think voters care so much about process and where you are with money and so forth. I think people who are really political do. But I think in the end it becomes who has the best message at the right time and who rises. And this is the beginning of that process. But as I said, it'll have many, many turns. And I'll tell you, I'd rather be rising in November and December than necessarily in August and September.
Chris, maybe help me out with this, being the money guy, the nerd here at Fox. I always look at it, this is also about donors and try to wow them and say, don't forget about me, don't forget about me. But we have so many candidates who have so much money, a record number of them with money, that they could stay in this race, whether it's really wise for them to do so or not, because they have so much money. How does that play in this whole process?
Well, look, here's the deal. For these candidates, they have been telling their donors, they've been telling billionaires and millionaires, I got this, I can do this, I can go the distance, and it all sounds good on paper. It all sounds good when you're sitting over gin and tonics at the club. But now you got to actually do it. And so if you're somebody like Marco Rubio, let's say, Marco Rubio struggled in the polls of late, but he has a lot of support from a lot of big backers who have been terribly impressed by what he does and what he says. He's got to reconnect with voters this week. He's got to show voters on Thursday, oh yeah, I remember this guy, really like him, he's really good. So the stakes are high for these guys who have convinced very rich people to give them a great deal of money. They've got to deliver the goods this week.
Pat Caddell, I noticed Donald Trump obviously is a feature in this race. Apparently he's making some news. That's what Chris tells me. But one of the things I noticed in the latest polls, Pat, is that Donald Trump's negatives have gone down markedly. And I'm wondering what that says about the Republican voter right now, whether he or she is more smitten by Trump, doesn't see as quite the polarizing candidate he appeared to be at the outset, and whether that represents some staying power here.
Yeah, well, it could. I mean, it's very impressive in all the polls. His favorability among Republicans has increased, and his ceiling is rising, if you will. Those who say they wouldn't vote for him, you just showed on the air, 59 down to 33. All of those things point to he is having a really interesting impact. And I'd also agree with Chris, by the way, what he said about Marco Rubio, for instance. Rubio came out of the box really hot. I thought he had the best announcement of anyone, and then
but almost too hot. Almost too hot.
Almost too hot. Yeah. But he has been languishing. He and several of these other candidates need to restart their engines. Some need to get them started for the first time, but some of them need to get them restarted. But yes, the Trump thing is interesting. I didn't know he made news today. What did he do?
Well, I was just playing it up.
Okay.
Just work with me, okay, and we'll have you back. No, Chris, one other thing, in all serious point, I want to mention to you or get your take on it. This idea that maybe the pressure's on to perform early, or else you could be out of the race. I've heard a number of media organizations characterizing it. Well, we'll winnow this process out into the fall. That long before the Iowa event, long before New Hampshire, that we might have candidates dropping out.
We have too many candidates. The Democrats have too few candidates. The Republicans have too many. So, and remember, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of people who have filed for the Republican nomination. They're all out there. So you've got all of these people out there. There's 17 of them whose names have been regularly offered in recent days by pollsters. Republicans are in a mood where they say, well, we don't want to make the same mistake we did last time. We don't want to settle, have a guy they don't want to get burned again. So they're weighing their choices. They're being careful. But a natural thing has to happen, which is out of the many thousands of flowers that bloom in the field, a bouquet is going to be picked. And you go from an elimination round, and this starts an elimination round, and then you go to a selection round. And what we'll be looking for is when you have the Fox Business debate, when we have the next Fox News Channel debate, what we'll expect is that the group will coalesce, and we'll see who gets what candidates share the vote, who gets what, and we'll expect to see that coalescing over time.
Very interesting. Chris, I want to thank you. Patrick, as always, a pleasure.